Hello everyone. So recently I've been talking a bit about the stance of INFJs to external reality and the modern world. I've talked about three different subtypes of INFJs that are classified according to the choice they make vis-a-vis the modern world and what they are going to do in it, the stance they're going to take toward it. I started with a fairly uncontroversial category, which I consider to be the first mode of being that an INFJ can choose to be, which is the adaptive, submissive INFJ, just suppressing their individuality, principally through the repression of their NI function for the sake of getting on with other people. It leads to a life of spiritual and meaning impoverishment. I don't think that it can be satisfying in the long run. But it is a stage that most of us go through. Now, what's interesting is that the second stage, which I have called solipsism, I named as also a suboptimal strategy, where an INFJ is distrusting of the external reality and decides to be self-contained, protect their introverted intuition insights, and not depend on other people because they don't trust other people. And in the comments, that I always read in my videos, I really noticed that a lot of people say it's not external reality per se that I don't trust, is the fact that external reality has people in it and I don't trust most people. And the world today is full of people that are activated by an ideology that I trust even less. And I'm struggling to make myself understood in terms of what's good about solipsism and what's not so good about it, what's required to move beyond that. So I decided that I was going to offer you a little reading from chapter 3 of my new book, The Infinite Soul. Okay, chapter 3, which is called Reconnecting with Spirit, right? Reconnecting with Spirit. So also, if you haven't got the book, this will give you an idea of what the writing is like. And so I want to read a passage from page 68 to page 73, I think. And it's subtitled, Spiritualized the INFJ as a Meaning-Making Being. Okay? So hopefully my reading abilities are not too dull, and this won't go on for too long, but I want to give you an idea of what is at stake here, especially in the transition from being a solipsistic INFJ to being a liberated INFJ that is able to retrieve and reconnect with external reality. As I firmly believe this is the optimal path for a happy, meaningful, and purposeful life for INFJs, which is what all this book is about. Okay, so here it goes. Some linguists like to say that our language is full of dead metaphors. They mean by this that a well-worn metaphor just becomes a natural part of our language through repeated use, until we no longer think of it as a metaphor. For a language, and by extension for a culture, to remain vibrant, there needs to be a stock of new metaphors constantly being filled. Absent this, the culture ossifies. You can take this analogy to illustrate the role that a spiritualized INFJ, and that's a synonym for a liberated INFJ, the higher rank, if you like, compared to solipsistic, would play in this society. She would keep the stock of new metaphors well filled. Introverted intuition does this almost without effort when functioning unhindered, since the kind of speech it tends to produce is almost always, in the first instance, metaphorical. In an earlier epoch, people might have called you a prophet for allowing an I to function unhindered in you. Not so in today's technocratic societies. And though the phenomenon is most acute in the West, globalization facilitates its spread everywhere else as well. The crisis of meaning hasn't yet peaked in non-Western regions, but the West can be taken as a blueprint of what happens when the value of meaning-making is repudiated as magical. Magical in inverted commas. You can probably discern where I see the importance of the INFJ in this. Given her makeup, the INFJ is constitutionally unable not to see the world as meaning-filled. Only patience and dedication to repress this function, routinized over time into habit, can lead her to embrace the stance of the mechanist, the technocrat. But no INFJ is actually born this way. The trait is adaptive and not innate. The benefits of an adaptation are clear enough in a technocratic society, and it would be irresponsible of me to exhort you all to quit your jobs and cut off your hard-earned networks. The reality is that we are stuck in the system now, and abruptly exiting it is neither a desirable nor reasonable solution. At the same time, it is crucial to realize that things are only going to get worse if we do nothing. And here I mostly mean we INFJs. Let's include INTJs as well, for good measure. The return to spirit, to the sacred, to positive ideology as a revived sense of direction for our societies beyond the stark realities of social alienation and nihilistic egoism, represents so many movements that can't be kicked into gear without the participation of INFJs. Some truly new ideas and perspectives are needed, and these won't emerge without new vocabularies. We need new metaphors, new descriptions, new ways of world making, to quote Nelson Goodman, the philosopher Nelson Goodman. Here is precisely the role which I am firmly convinced INFJs are destined to play here and now. And INFJs themselves need this just as much as the world does. The alternative, which is so familiar to us nowadays, is a life of perennial, low-intensity, frustrated adaptation. If we agree on the diagnosis, the question becomes, what do we do now? It is a question that admits of no easy answer due to our embeddedness in the system. Like I said, we derive evident material and social benefits from adapting to the technocratic zeitgeist. But there are other drivers at work. Technocracy is only the concrete manifestation of the mechanistic worldview, the means-end worldview, which I often talk about in my videos, and INFJs have submitted to the worldview prior to the manifestation. A good indication of this is the sense of inadequacy, sometimes veering into shame in fact, which INFJs feel when they struggle to express their thought in words. They envy the articulation of extroverts, particularly those leading with extroverted judgments, extrovert intuition as well. Seldom would it occur to them that this enigmatic relationship to the word is a potential source of strength. And why would they, since the unconsciously accepted mechanistic worldview places a premium on the opposite? To think well, so the worldview says, is to think transparently. And the best evidence of transparent thinking is spontaneous, effortless articulation. On one level, we can easily understand why maximal transparency is so strongly valued in a technological world. It vastly increases efficiency. The problem with that attitude, the attitude that is all about efficiency, is that it must neglect meaning. I say must, because the articulation of new meanings has itself nothing to do with efficiency. People often say that the INFJ is slow to think, though she may come up with occasional insights of interest. The truth is that the INFJ is not a slow thinker. Only it takes her time to translate the thoughts into coherent strings of words. In a society where quick thinking is linked to quick articulation, though, it is no surprise that INFJs should be perceived this way. And they frequently suffer from this. As an incentive to remain forgetful of one's spiritual nature, the fear of social judgment is probably as strong as a desire for material well-being, though I must note that the two drivers interact as well, since material well-being contributes to social status. Let's now look at what can concretely be done. Fortunately, despite all the obstacles, there are grounds for hope. But there is no doubt that earnest openness to change and a great deal of self-discipline will be required. The first essential step is a shift in perceptual register. Given the power of inertia, there is a drastically high chance that even an INFJ who reads this book and agrees with its conclusions, will just return to oblivious adaptation once the book is finished. The fact of the matter is, mechanism is the comfort zone for all of us now. It permeates our daily lives. It will require significant effort to train ourselves to recognize it for what it is, namely, just one possible worldview among others. Once a set of new habits is formed, though, the act of resisting should become gradually easier. Another mental habit I want to highlight is that of seeing the spiritual as the realm of all things meaningful, rather than a woo-woo activity that some of us like to pursue in private. A decent mnemonic device could be the following motto: for mechanism, nothing is meaningful. For spirituality, everything is. And the two can coexist as vocabularies rising from the generous openness of the infinite attitude. Given the rise of nihilism in the West, it is becoming apparent that a well-functioning society must incorporate both a mechanistic and a spiritual side. To simplify the picture somewhat, mechanism in the service of material well-being, spirituality in the service of psychological and cultural well-being. The majority of INFJs will have a role to play in pushing the latter agenda. A third mental habit follows, that of showing a healthy degree of skepticism toward the pop variants of spirituality. As long as these remain private affairs for people, they will continue legitimating mechanism, its colluding flip side, as the sole repository of public truth. And we want to change that. I encourage skepticism rather than rejection, because a private pastime is totally fine so long as it's known to be such. I am also open to the possibility that some variants of pop spirituality are en route to becoming full-blown spiritual attitudes, in which case we should rejoice. If you manage to acquire these three mental habits, the next step should be a lot smoother to implement and practice. You want to allow your spiritual potential to blossom without hurting either your material well-being or the esteem you've garnered among social peers, right? Well, the good news is that you can do just that. I encourage you to grow what I like to call islands of spirit. And last paragraph of this passage. The principle behind islands of spirit is straightforward enough. You want to carve out some space in your life for communities of like-minded individuals who share a commitment to the sacred, to the meaningful. These can be either offline or online, though of course offline is always better, more conducive to extroverted feeling. Such communities need not be organized around a single theme, such as philosophy, religion, or even spirituality in the broad sense. They can involve going on walks in nature, traveling to distant places, watching films, discussing each other's relationships, dreams, fears. The list could go on. The subject matter here is not as important as the unspoken pledge to spend some time together on a non-instrumental footing. So I'll stop here, and I will look forward to your ideas, to your reactions. I want you to know if you would like me to do more of those readings to get better acquainted with this book. And there's also the Ecstatic Soul, which is my previous book, which looks at the inner psychology of INFJs. You can also get it. Let me know if you find this useful as a response to some of your comments, and if you'd like to see more of this. There's also a Patreon link that really helps massively here down there. Please support me. See you soon.